well, welcome to Compliance 101. As mentioned earlier, this workshop is going to be recorded for YouTube Live, so we'll be able to answer all questions at the end, and certainly with the microphone being used. So to begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Bridget O'Shea, and I'm the Compliance Manager for the Department of Procurement Services. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. Looking at our agenda today, we're going to go over, basically what we do, and we as in compliance within the department, as well as the types of systems that we use to accomplish those things. So compliance, our team is responsible for reviewing compliance plans for the lowest responsive bidder when they are identified. We review those compliance plans. We'll spend a lot of time talking about those. And then once a contract is awarded, we are responsible for monitoring the compliance associated with that contract or project, rather. So if there's contract goals, whether it be minority, woman-owned, disadvantaged business goals, Chicago residency requirements, local residency requirements, we review and monitor those throughout the duration of the contract. So how we do it, we do a few different things. One, we utilize the Certification and Compliance System software, which is known as C2. We utilize a certified payroll processing system known as LCP Tracker. And we're going to talk about both of these systems later on in our presentation. We conduct audits, whether it be before, when we're reviewing that compliance plan, or post-award when that contract is actually in progress, or at the end of closeouts. We could conduct an audit at any given time. And then we have field analysts. Our field analysts actually go out into the field and will conduct site visits. So we're going to kind of go over an overview of all of these items right here. So I want to start with providing an overview of the various types of schedules that we could potentially see on how a bidder or a proposer intends to carry out their compliance goals. And so these are common contract documents that we would be receiving. The Schedule B, that is specific for a joint venture with the MBEWBE or DBE firm. Joint venture affidavit, we would only see that if it is applicable to that contract. The Schedule C is the letter of intent, and that letter of intent is actually from the certified firm intending to perform on that project. So it could be a certified minority, woman-owned, or disadvantaged business, depending on the contract type and requirements. The Schedule D is essentially the compliance plan. So those two terms are interchangeable. And so when we talk about a compliance plan, I refer to the Schedule D and vice versa. And that outlines by the bidder or the proposer how they intend to meet the goals, listing out the participation for each of those certified firms. And then the Schedule H. This is used for the prime or bidder to document their good faith efforts, meaning if they were unable to meet the contract goals, we would need to see how the prime attempted to reach these goals. Now this document is not this is only one factor of the many factors that we use when evaluating good faith efforts. So a proper compliance plan submittal. So basically, in order for us to review a proper compliance plan, a bid or proposal can or may be rejected as non-responsive if the bidder fails to submit one or more of the following, which includes the Schedule D, which again is an outline of those certified MW or DBE firms, documentation of good faith efforts, and or a request for a full or partial waiver of the contract goals. Sorry. There we go. All right. So, assuming that the bidder or proposer submitted all of those required documents, my group would then come in and review a compliance plan. So, want to go over what our unit really reviews, and I want to emphasize that the compliance unit, we are detail oriented. We are meticulous. We want more information, and more often than not, we are going back to the bidders or their subcontractors requesting additional information. It's not uncommon for us to do so. So the first thing we're looking at is the Schedule C, and in a few slides we'll have an example of a Schedule C up here. But we want to make sure the project name is on this document, the specification number is on this document, detailing out what that firm intends to perform. Now keep in mind, the Schedule C is submitted and filled out by the subcontractor, by the certified firm. So they want to be as detailed as possible in that submittal. A dollar amount. The dollar amount should match the amount that is on the Schedule D. And the dates. The dates are a big thing of when the Schedule C was signed. Those are just a few of the items that we're looking for. Part of our review also includes the certification letters. Now, while our compliance unit does not certify firms, that is another unit within DPS, we are reviewing those letters of certified firms to review their area of specialty, to understand that the work that they described on the Schedule C coincides with what they're certified to perform in. So we look at the certification letter, we make sure it's correct, it's stated, it's still valid, it's not an expired certification letter. And then we're looking at quotes and proposals. So again, going back to what I explained earlier, we will reach out to the bidders or the subcontractors, the certified firms, to request copies of the proposals that were submitted to that bidder at the time. The goal really is to confirm the agreement between the bidder and the certified firm, how that agreement was made and when it was made. So we may ask for additional documentation. We may ask for all of the communications that took place as it relates to that agreement. Some common mistakes that our compliance unit and I kind of came up with are the following: incomplete or brief descriptions of work. We don't want to see a two-word description. I like details. Compliance unit likes details. So again, that is something that we will always be coming back and asking for additional clarification on. The mentor-protege question, if it's unanswered, it's towards the end of the schedule, and sometimes it's overlooked, it's not answered, so we need that subcontractor to go back, initial and date that acknowledgement. The subcontracting levels, and again, I'm going to refer back to the Schedule Cs in the next few slides, but if they're going to be, if that certified firm is intending on subcontracting out any of their work, we would want to see, one, is it being subcontracted out to another certified MBE or WBE firm? Or is it being subcontracted out to a non-certified firm? So we want to make sure everything is complete. If it is being subcontracted out, we are asking for a detailed description of what that firm or those firms are going to be providing, the name of the firm, all of that good stuff. And supplier participation. We will spend a little bit of time talking about how we count participation credit for firms participating on the contract. Suppliers, what I'll say right now is suppliers receive 60%, and sometimes there are miscalculations or none at all. So we have to go back to explain how supplier participation credit is counted. Okay, so the long-awaited Schedule C that I was talking about, and I apologize, I'm not sure if you could see this clearly or not, but the highlighted areas were the areas that are obviously key to completing this document, and furthermore, relevant to what we just reviewed, right? I showcased the project name, the specification number. We want to make sure that that is on there. Obviously, who the firm is, who that subcontractor is, identifying themselves clearly, as well as who that prime contractor is. The detailed description, that's the middle part of the page right now. There's only a few lines provided. I understand that. If firms need to, they could attach additional sheets as necessary in order to give us that detail that we're looking for. And then obviously a breakdown of the pay items, description of those items, quantity, price, and the total. It does also break down that total at 60% if they are a supplier. So that's where we would see that calculation come into play. Part 2 of this is partial pay items. So again, if there is a line item within the specification and they're going to provide partial services, labor items for that project, you would see that listed here. The subcontracting, the subcontracting levels. That again is where you would depict if you were subcontracting out any of the work, whether it be to a certified MBEWBE firm or to a non-certified firm. And that last section that I have highlighted for you, that is the mentor-protege question. Okay, so knowing what the Schedule C looks like, knowing what we in compliance look for, I want to spend, I'm going to read from the slide to understand the importance of a commercially useful function, because this is a key component for us in compliance, and this is something that we look at prior to award as far as what's outlined on their Schedule Cs or detailed down in the quotes or proposals, but also post-award, we're also monitoring that commercially useful function. So let me just read the definition real quick and then we'll talk a little bit more. Commercially useful function means the responsibility for the execution of a distinct element of the work of the contract, which is carried out by actually performing, managing, and supervising the work involved, evidencing the responsibilities and risks of a business owner, such as negotiating the terms of subcontracts, taking on financial risk with the contract or its subcontract, the responsibility for acquiring the appropriate lines of credit and or loans, or fulfilling responsibilities as a joint venture partner as described in the joint venture agreement. So what's important about all that I just read? Performing, managing, and supervising. Every firm should be able to stand alone and perform on that project, manage that project, supervise their own workforce and the flow of the project. This is key, this is important, this is a big function that my compliance officers look at, as well as our field analysts that they look at. It is a three-pronged approach. If any of those items is absent, then a firm could be potentially not performing a commercially useful function. Okay, areas of specialty. So as I discussed earlier, compliance, we are reviewing certification letters. Certification letters identify a firm, certify a firm within a certain NAICS code or several NAICS codes. NAICS is an acronym for the North American Industry Classification System, and it is the standard that is used by federal agencies when classifying business establishments for the purpose of collecting, analyzing data, all related to our economy. They're important to us in compliance because when a firm is seeking certification, they're identifying those areas or area of specialty in which they are seeking certification in. So if I were to review a certification letter today, I'm looking at that NAICS code, and a firm may have one, it may have several. There's not a limit. And so I'm reviewing those NAICS codes and understanding what that firm is doing, comparing what the firm is doing based off of the Schedule C to the description within that NAICS code, right? Because if you have a firm that is certified in landscaping and they intend to paint on a job, they could paint. I bet they could paint pretty well. But as far as we, city, giving credit for it, we cannot give participation credit for when a firm is not certified within that area of specialty. So we do spend a lot of time with this. Our compliance unit will work closely with the certification unit if ever there's additional clarification that we need in making a determination. Counting credit. So MBEs, WBEs, and DBEs who self-perform their work, we would count that at 100%. Manufacturers, MBE, WBE, DBEs, who manufacture, we would count it at 100%. Suppliers, certified firms, would be counted at 60%. So, I see your face, puzzled. Let me explain. So, I'm a WBE supplier. I sell blue pens. And you come to me and you say, Bridget, I need 100 blue pens. Great. It's $1 a pen. You say, that's a little steep, but okay. So you're going to pay me that money. What are we, $60, right? As far as credit goes, it only goes toward, or you need 100 pens, $1 each, it's $100. You're paying me $100. Credit is given to you as the prime at a rate of 60%. So that $60 that of the $100 you gave me for me supplying those pens, only 60 will go towards that contract goal. We can talk, is it working? Okay, all right. And we can talk more if you have more questions later. So, but that is a big point of clarification. If I'm solely a supplier and providing those materials and not doing anything additional outside of that, and I am certified as a supplier, credit is counted at the 60%. Now, this is where the fun begins. This is where compliance really gets fun, if we haven't gotten there already. So, post-award, the contract is awarded. Our compliance officers start monitoring compliance. We monitor the MBEWBE participation. We monitor Equal Employment Opportunity, which is the EEO. We monitor if there are Chicago residency or local residency requirements within that contract, we monitor those as well. Okay. The C2 system, that again is our certification and compliance system known as C2. This is how we, the last slide, it just shows we monitor the MBEWBE participation. Part of that is utilizing C2 for that. So we utilize C2 to track payments. We utilize C2 as a form of verification from not only the prime, but any of their subcontractors specific to certified firms. And we're able to identify a trending of how that vendor is trending at the current time of meeting their overall contract goals based off of payments made. I thought there was another slide. I apologize. So to go over this process a little bit is with the payments, a prime is notified via the system that payments have been made against the contract, right? And they are then notified to go in and report any payments made to their subcontractors, their certified firms performing on the project, whether it's a $0, or they didn't perform or pay anything that month, or whatever that dollar amount is. They'll have to do that from the onset, once that first payment is issued, all the way to the closeout. Once that prime reports that dollar amount, that subcontractor has to then go in, they're also notified via email, to go in and review and either confirm or reject that payment that was reported by the prime. The good thing about this is if there is any discrepancies, we're able to capture it right away. Us in compliance would be able to get involved if necessary and go through the proper channels, right? So ideally, the prime pays subcontractor A $100, B $100, and those two subcontractors, A and B, both go in and confirm, yes, we in fact did receive $100 for this month. There can be a time where a prime says, I paid you $100, and the sub says, no, I only received 50, or I received 0, and these are just examples. So that subcontractor has the opportunity to go in and say no, and provide additional information, whether it be to the prime, they could make a direct comment to the prime, or a private comment to the city directly, our compliance officer, whoever is assigned to it, to say no payment was received, this was, here's a copy of the canceled check, and this is what it is going on. So we are able to identify if there is any discrepancy and work through it. More often than not, when these things or issues arise, we will be asking for invoices, purchase orders, canceled checks, you name it, in order to support and bring that issue to resolution. So I really like the system just, for that. And then obviously the trending report, right? So the trending report is how they're doing. If the goals are 26 and 6, based off of the payments made, how are they doing as far as achieving overall compliance? Okay. The other system that we use is the Certified Payroll Processing System, and that is known as LCP Tracker. This system we use specifically for our construction projects to monitor EEO, Chicago residency, local residency, labor compliance. It's automatically generated. Every contractor performing on a construction project that is performing labor on one of our projects is required to submit and certify payroll records in this system. So The good thing, you know, similar to the C2 system, what we would see is if there's any variances, right? If there's any discrepancies with what they are reporting paying their employees versus what they should be paying their employees. So this is also a really good system that we utilize. And again, this is not limited to just certified firms. This is specific to all contractors performing labor on the construction project. Our field analyst. So again, you know, just to kind of recap so far, how we manage compliance. We utilize the C2 system. We utilize the LCP tracker. We conduct the audits within those two, but we also have our field analysts. And our field analysts, they go out to projects. They're out in the field, I would say 85, 90% of the time they're out in the field. And with that, their main focus, their primary focus is conducting CUF reviews, also known as commercially useful function, right? So we spend a little bit of time talking about the commercially useful function. Are you managing? Are you using your own equipment? Are you supervising the job? They're going out there and making those observations. They're going out there interviewing employees that are on those job sites. They're going out there requesting wage information. So it's not uncommon for them to ask an employee on a job site what their wage is or what their, you know, craft or classification is. So the site visits that we have, again, some of the things that they look for. Contractor inspection reports. And so this is basically a canvassing of the workforce that is on that job site observed that day. So they're observing the gender, race, and trade of those employees, identifying, if possible, where that work is being performed, and the contractors that are out there that day, right? So specifically for construction, when we talk about this, you know, you could have a project that lasts years. Everyone from your demo to your painting and landscaping. And so who you see on day one, 2 years later, may not be out there, but you'll be seeing those other firms that are performing. They reviewed the job boards to ensure the correct forms and posters, I should say, are posted and apparent and on the job site. Again, they're conducting the employee interviews, so they're verifying, you know, their name, address, trade, wages, and who they're employed by. These are common questions that we ask just to ensure, again, commercially useful function. And then obviously the biggest one, commercially useful function review. That's a separate report. And so they're reviewing the certified firms that are out there. They're looking at the equipment, they're taking pictures of the equipment, whose name is on the equipment. They're looking at all of that. They're observing who's managing, supervising the employees. Are they working within that area, that designated scope of work, right? And so it goes back to that landscaping firm who was going to do the painting. Who's doing what? What are they doing? Are they certified in that area? And so they bring those results back to us in the office, and we'll review it with me as their manager, as well as the compliance officer, to report any potential deficiencies, to continue that audit process. So I look at the field analysts as the eyes and ears of the project, right? In the office, we're looking at it from a standpoint of kind of behind the scenes. They're going out there. They see what's happening. And then last, this is our closeout overview. So I kind of broke this down in sections as far as the process when it comes into play for compliance to close out a project. Final quantities are received. They are submitted to us by the user department. We are requesting the waivers if they aren't provided at that time, whether they're partial or full waivers. We're requesting all of the necessary documents. A review is conducted. What firms were not utilized, if any? We want to know why not, right? So if there was a subcontractor that was listed on the compliance plan that was not used during the course of that project or contract, we want to know why, because it could impact and potential deficiencies, definitely a shortfall, and, you know, be requesting more financials from them. Our compliance officers are then doing a complete payroll review of the hours on the project. If EEO was applicable, a review of those, as well as if the Chicago residency was a requirement, and the local residency. Again, not every contract has these requirements, so we have to know going into it, what does the contract require? What are the goals? What are we looking for when we're closing it out? After that review is completed, our officers will complete a preliminary review. That preliminary review identifies if there's any shortfalls, and that shortfall could be in any of the categories based off of that contract. So if it's MBEWBE shortfall, going back, if they didn't utilize a certain firm, or there was change orders, whatever the case may be, that shortfall letter would go out separately. If EEO, CRO, or the local residency was part of their requirements, an additional preliminary letter based off of those findings, if there is a shortfall. They have, that prime contractor has an opportunity to say, well, wait a second. We made good faith efforts, right? We were short in our EO requirements, but, you know, finding female apprentices was challenging, and we went here and we went there, and they showcase that information. We review it and we ask for the documents to support it. It's one thing to say you did all of this, show me you did all of it. And we are very adamant as far as collecting that documentation as part of our good faith review. Assuming, regardless of which way it goes with our good faith review, at the end of the day, we are going to issue a final. That final is, we've reviewed, we've conducted this preliminary, we reviewed, if applicable, the good faith efforts, and based off of this information, the final determination is X, Y, and Z. So it is a very detailed process. It doesn't happen overnight, but we are, you know, utilizing the systems that we have, reaching out and having, you know, those conversations as far as, these are our findings. If you want to dispute it, giving them an opportunity, and then coming back and issuing that final. So with that said, we'll open it up for questions. Jackie, do you want to get the microphone? Thank you. So again, this is being recorded, and so in order to ask a question, we ask that you use the microphone if you do have a question, so that way it could be heard.
Thank you. Yes, so it's on. Okay. You did mention at the end it's for the contract closeout overview. When you said it doesn't happen overnight, I'm very curious to know like what is the approximate time it does take?
Well, so this review process, from the second we receive the final quantities to issuing a final letter, that time varies. My goal is, I would say, 60 to 90 days. But it really is, there's a few components that play into it that can prolong that time frame. Two things. One, getting the waivers, because we need these documents in order to do it. And two, a review of good faith efforts. A review of good faith efforts, depending on what documents are provided to us and the timeliness of that contractor getting those documents to us and then us conducting a review. I mean, I've seen binders submitted. So those are the two big components I would say happens. But generally speaking, 60 to 90 days, we're closing it out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. You take care.